Okay, welcome back to this section, which is 4.4, multiplying fractions. So, there's one rule about multiplying fractions that we want you to take in consideration is the decimal spots. So on each, what I want you to do is underline each decimal spot. This has one decimal spot, this has two. So your final answer, when you combine them, you need to have 3 decimal spots. Okay? So I'm going to do the first one by hand. I know we have our calculators, but I'm going to do the first one by hand. 2.36 times 4.5. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3 up here. Then you'd say 3 times 5 is 15 plus 3 is 18. Carry the 1. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is 11. Then what you need to do is you need to now say 4 times 6 is 24. I'm going to mark out that 3. Now I'm going to put a 2 there. So then you'd say 3 times 4 is 12 plus that 2 would make that a 14. Do the 1. 2 times 4 is 8 plus that 1 is 9. Now I'm going to go ahead and when you multiply, you always on the second line or each line that you go down, you always skip a spot, but I'm going to put an understood 0 there. So now I'm going to add these up. 0. 8 plus 4 is 2. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Plus 4 is 6. And then 1 plus 9 is 10. I had 3 decimal spots. So I'm going to start here. 1, 2, 3. So it'll be 10.62. And if you want to put a 0, or you can just leave it out. So my next one I'm going to do is I've got 1 decimal spot, but then I've got 3. So my answer I know is going to have 4 in it. So if you take your calculator and multiply these out, you get you actually get 23.08056, which most of the time on our calculators we're going to have the correct decimal spot. Okay. Now you do 3, you got number 3, you got 4.678 times 100. So what I want to show you is this. If you got 100, which has got 2 zeros, you just move your decimal spot 2 spots, and your answer is going to be 467.8. I'm going to use the same thing and take a look at this. If I got 3 zeros, you just move the decimal spot 1, 2, 3. Now I've got 4,678. So that's one thing with when you have like 100, 10, you have 1,000, 10,000 stuff, you can always move the decimal spots over to the right when you multiply. But there's a however. Now we do the opposite. I've got 1 decimal spot. That means when you got like 0.1, 0.0001, when you see stuff like that, you can always move your decimal back that 1 spot. So 5.78. Here's another one. Now look where the 1 is. It's got 2 decimal spots, so that means what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 5.78, add a couple of zeros. Usually I always add whatever spots you are. I just add the many zeros. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over 2 decimals, and I get 0.0578. It's going to also ask you about circumference. Well, one thing about circumference is it's basically the perimeter of the circle. So you've got 2 formulas. Circumference is 2 pi r, or circumference is pi d, depending on whether you're given the radius or diameter. So I'm going to give you a circle that's got a radius of 5.9 yards, and I want to ask you, find C, or the circumference, in terms of pi. And in part B, look at this. Use pi, which is 3.14, to find C. This is the number one mistake we make on this, is understanding what the terms of pi are. That means whatever your answer is, you do not multiply it by pi. You just put that pi symbol behind it. So since I've given a radius, let me scroll that just up just a little bit. A radius, I'm going to use my circumference equals 2 pi times the radius is 5.9. So if I say 5.9 times 2, that gives me 11.8 pi. So in terms of pi, we do not multiply. You just leave it like that. Part B, on the other hand, this is when you would actually tell me, okay, what 11.8 times, for my pi I'm going to use someone times 3.14. But remember our rules of multiplication. I got 1 decimal, 2 decimals. That means my answer is going to have 3 decimals in it. So if I multiply this out, I get 37.052, and the units is the same as right here, our radius, which is yards. That's basically the perimeter around the circle. And finally, I have an area of fence that is 15.2 and 8.79, and I need to find the area from those dimensions. We'll take a look at this. I've got 3 decimals that I need to have in my answer. So area equals 15.2 times 8.79. And when we do this combination, we should get 133.608. And it's going to be feet squared. Area is always squared because you're multiplying 2 feet. Okay, thank you for listening. So for my Math 61 class, please be looking out for my next section, which is 5.1, ratio and proportion. Thank you very much.